Okay, I'm back for this week's poll list. This is poll list week 3, I think, going on. And we are getting close to the end of the Rebirth issues. So those are the issues that are taking place before the actual series starts to kind of set up what's coming up. And so the first one that I have today is the only Rebirth issue that came out this week. And that is Titans Rebirth. Now this is the series that is going to be the more original Titans cast members from that kind of time within the Titans that were kind of that started it for the most part. So basically this book is explaining kind of who the Titans are, how they originated, why the relationships are important, and he's kind of the center. Wally West is kind of the center of this whole thing, and basically he is explaining, from you get some good shots of the younger Titans, the younger Teen Titans when they were Teen Titans, and what they were all about. You have this kind of cool thing that they do where they, just kind of talk about the relationships and what they've been through. And then we flash forward to Wally now in his new costume, which we've gotten glimpses of in previews and things like that. But now it's fully realized. And I like it a lot. I think it looks really good. I think it's a good mix between him being Flash and him being Kid Flash with the open cowl, which is awesome. I always, I didn't want him to go back as Kid Flash because he's had a legacy as the Flash for years and years and years. And it's good that they're kind of, showing that, but also showing that he's a different Flash than Barry. So it works out really well. And the first person he runs into is Nightwing, who doesn't remember him, obviously. And it turns into them kind of fighting, except for every time Wally comes into contact with someone, this weird jolt of energy is releasing inside them, or doing something to them that is very interesting, and it makes them jog their memory and remember who Wally is, which I don't know if it's going to be that easy for everyone, but for these people at least, it's explained that the Speed Force, for some reason, always finding a way, the Speed Force is jogging their. It's kind of cool. You get to see all of these characters, get their memory jogged from all that's going on. You get this nice splash page after Nightwing awakens, and you get to see the entire Titans group, and they all are not knowing who Wally is, and they all start to try to fight him. And you got Roy Harper, you got Aqualad and Nightwing and Donna Troy, and they're all fighting in their own different ways. And every person he's eventually touching is kind of getting their memory jogged back. And it's kind of interesting because each person that gets their memory jogged, you get a nice little flashback of a very personal moment between Wally and that person. So, for instance, with Roy, you get a little nice flashback of Wally first seeing his apartment and kind of talking about his relationship with Oliver Queen. And it's not anything necessarily important. It's always something very, just something that, is a small thing that probably meant something to them. For instance, Dick Grayson's was just an interesting moment of him and Wally stealing the Batmobile back when he was Robin and Wally was Kid Flash, and they stole the Batmobile. And that's just a fun moment that isn't important, but that they remember. That's what Nightwing remembers. Donna Troy is them pulling a prank on Roy. So it's a lot of interesting thing. It's just one of those things that it's not important, but they for some reason remember. You have Aqualad with them. He's just talking to Wally about how hard it is that his father, is a king, and he doesn't know how to balance between Earth and or between the mainland and the ocean. But they all eventually remember, and they're all just going, Wally, 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 Wally. Wow, we forgot about you. How can we, how can we do that? And it leads to him kind of explaining, first of all, this wonderful page here where it's all of them hugging and saying hi to Wally and welcoming him back. But it's basically him just explaining kind of what's going on with, this 10 years being missing, and they don't know why, and relationships. And the Titans have kind of been on it. They've been kind of figuring this out for themselves as well. And they are happy that Wally's with them now with more answers, so they're going to kind of go out on this journey to figure out what it is. And the thing he's happy about is that he now has his best friends to work with. So this is one of those more touching books of the week. I think everything Wally has been involved in has been more of the touching things. And I like it a lot because it's everyone just welcoming him back to the universe, and he's meeting with all these people that were really important to him, and he was really important to them. And these, they're all reuniting, which is always really cool. I'm excited for this book to take off and start going into, more answers too. So that was a good book. I liked it a lot. Next we have Superman #1. This is taking place right after Superman Rebirth, really. Now, when I was first looking into these books between Superman and Action Comics, I was more excited for this one. This one is going to focus more on the relationship with their son, Jonathan. If I call him Connor at any point, I apologize. I keep wanting to call him Connor Kent. His name's Jonathan, but I, for some reason, keep doing that. I might have done it in a previous video, I don't know. But basically, it's going to be about Jonathan and how he's, assimilating with what's going on and fitting in. And it's a nice, the best part of the book for me, one of them, is the beginning, where it's basically pre-52 Clark talking to New 52 Clark, and basically he's, saying goodbye to him and that he's going to take over his legacy, and you get this awesome splash page of him, finally putting on the costume. And then you get this second awesome splash page, which is basically his origin and a bunch of things he's been doing. I can't do it justice here. You just got to pick up the book for that. But it's awesome. This is the best. Those 3 pages are probably the best art in the entire book, because this is written by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason with who was the I think Patrick Gleason did the art, but he's very hit and miss for me. I've seen him in other things. Sometimes it looks really good. Sometimes it looks kind of off. And I think most of the time it's good. The only thing that worries me is sometimes he makes people look like cats in the night with their eyes glowing. And I think sometimes he does it on purpose, because this whole book is basically through Jonathan's eyes and how he's seeing, his dad now that he's Superman. But still, I'm wondering if it keeps going, it could get kind of off-putting for me. But it starts with a storm that has, caught one of the barns on fire, and Superman's going and saving his cattle and livestock and all that. And it's it's Jonathan, dealing with that and seeing it, now realizing his dad is Superman. And there's this awesome picture of him doing a thumbs up. He's really, at the beginning of this book, he's really happy, and he's really, excited to see what's in store for him now that he's working with his powers, and his parents are letting him, every now and then, start trying to practice with them. And he has this cat Goldie, and his dad is telling him, you can't constantly use your powers, you have to, first do your chores and do them right and know how to do them and know how to live life without these powers, because you're going to have to the majority of the time. And so he has him do these chores, and he says, once you get done with these chores, we can start working on this barn, and that's where we can maybe work on your powers and really try to see how you can cut loose. And so he's off with his cat Goldie to do his chores, and a hawk comes and picks up the cat and starts flying away with it, and it angers Jonathan, obviously, and he loses control, and he uses his heat vision, and he not only fries the bird, but he also fries his cat. And it shows, that's where the art really comes in well too. It shows his heartbreak and his disappointment, and knowing he just he didn't control his powers, and it's really heartbreaking. I don't like cats at all. I usually don't have an emotional connection to cats at all. But the way they do this is really, it's sad. And I think a lot of people I've seen online have badly reviewed this book because of that. Just because they killed a cat. And I don't think that's fair at all, because that is a really good moment. And it's already showing that he's going to be dealing with these powers and he doesn't know how to control them. And it could lead to him, making mistakes. And there's this little girl who notices what happens. She sees it, this little blonde girl, and he doesn't say anything. She doesn't say anything. It just cuts to him coming back to the farm. Clark's still working on the farm, and Clark's all happy still, and he's asking about his chores, and Jonathan is acting funny, and Clark wants to start working on his powers with this barn, and Jonathan says he's not ready. And it's a really nice moment because it shows Superman or Clark saying, that's fine. He said, I'll work on it, and he said, if you're not ready, that's totally fine. We can take our time with this. And I like that. I like how he's not, push. Of course, he wouldn't be pushing Jonathan to start working on his powers or anything. He could take as much time as he needs. But he's kind of put off because, Jonathan was so excited to help with the barn and use his powers and all this. And then we kind of get a little dinner scene where we catch up with what's going on with Lois, and she's working on stuff, and Clark's getting used to being Superman, and they're eating dinner, and Jonathan's acting funny, of course. And the doorbell rings or whatever. Someone's at the door. And it's that little blonde girl, and she basically explains that she's moved into the farm right next to theirs, and her dad is a milkman, and he produces milk. And she basically just says hi, and they're all very happy and welcoming, and Jonathan is kind of cold and not talking, and they wonder why, and all of a sudden he gets really angsty about them having to keep a secret and having to be undercover because of they're not who they really say they are, and he lashes out at Clark, and Clark sternly tells him. It's a very tense moment in the book because you don't see Clark dealing with children or having a child, so it's an interesting thing to see how he handles being a dad and who he would be as a dad, and it gives writers the freedom to open up and think, there's this guy who's all powerful, and he's, a good guy. How would he have a kid, and how would he deal with having a kid? And it's kind of interesting. So Jonathan's sitting in his room, and he looks out the window, and Superman is meeting up with Batman and Wonder Woman outside. And there's not much Superman in this book yet. And he's he's using his super hearing, but it's cutting in and out because he's not used to it yet. And he's just hearing about, they're talking about him and about how he has powers and they need him, but Superman doesn't want to push it, and he's not ready, and his power levels are really high or something. You're not getting any context within what they're talking about. You're just getting these points, and you're kind of wondering, what are they talking about? And this is where you get this really interesting shot where Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman notice Jonathan, and they look at him very it looks very evil and very scary, and I think that's on purpose. I think it's to show, he's not used to seeing these people. He doesn't know who Wonder Woman and Batman are. He doesn't know his dad is Superman yet, and he's seeing, this whole different part of his life that he hasn't been introduced to yet. So he gets really scared, and it ends basically with Superman acting as RoboCop. Quickly and quietly, you're coming with me. And I don't know. It ends very dark, and I'm wondering. There's a lot of rumors that maybe that's not the real Superman. There's a hint at the title at the end that the Eradicator is going to be coming back. Maybe it's the Eradicator. Also, it could just be the vision of this kid who hasn't seen any of this yet, and this is how he's taking it. It can go in many directions, and I'm excited to see where it goes. It wasn't as good as I expected. It didn't start out with as big of a bang as I wanted. I think Action Comics actually was better than this issue, but I'm still excited for this because I'm really excited. I think, I don't know. I'm excited still, but I think that the writing of Jonathan is a lot better over in Action Comics because Dan Jurgens created the character. I think he kind of knows where a specific way to go with him, and it's interesting that he's not doing these stories with him dealing with his dad being Superman now. I think he'll do a little bit of that in Action Comics, but they're really focusing on Action Comics getting right into the action, which is awesome because that's what the whole book's about. Action has always been more about the action. Superman's been more about the story. And I do like where this story's going. It's just this one kind of felt slow. I think it's just they're taking their time with it. So I'm not, down on it. I think Action I personally liked a little more because it was exciting to see some things that I haven't seen in a while. This is going back to, building and building and building to what... It's not about Clark. It's not about... I mean, it is, but it's more about Jonathan. And it's exciting kind of, though, to see where it's going to go. So I recommend that still. I think the Superman books are better than they've been in years and years. Even before New 52, Superman was struggling with where to go with him. And now they've kind of given a reason to have a son and things, and I'm really excited to see where this is going. And I think the Superman books are on the top of the pyramid when it comes to, with this reboot or this relaunch. And, I not just because I'm a big Superman fan, I think just in general his stories have been more interesting than they've been in a very long time. Next up we have Batman #1. This is the big one. This is the one that's written by Tom King. Yeah, Tom King and David Finch with the art. And this is the book that everyone's been really excited to see where it's going because this is the book that's been passed on from Scott Snyder to Tom King, who I hear is a wonderful writer. And this shows it, definitely. This I liked much more than Detective. Actually, no. I didn't like it much more than Detective. The book that I really didn't like, the one I really didn't like was the Rebirth. I liked Rebirth, okay, but it didn't seem to be going anywhere. It just kind of had to throw in Duke with his costume and didn't go anywhere as much as the other Rebirth books. This is good. This is awesome. This is very Batman. I can definitely tell if you're looking for a Batman-centric story, Batman is where it's going to be. Detective Comics is where we're going to have that big group of a team with all the wonderful side characters that are going to be, getting along, hopefully. And I loved that book a lot. But this it was surprisingly good. Not surprisingly, but it was good, too. What's going on in this book is Batman's meeting up with Commissioner Gordon, talking about there are these missiles that they've confiscated, and they're missing one. And as they're talking, of course, someone fires the missile that they haven't found yet, the last one, and hits this airplane, this jetliner that's flying over Gotham. And it's a pretty simple story. Batman basically jumps into action, and he's trying to figure out with this cool page of him jumping down the building. We're getting a lot of shots of these lately, but they're always cool. And I love his new costume. And he's jumping into action trying to get started with stopping this plane because it's going to crash right in the middle of town square where there are thousands and thousands of people who will die. And he gets in his Batmobile, and he contacts Alfred and Duke, who are really giving him the math. Got a new Batmobile, of course, which looks awfully like the animated series Batman Batmobile, which is interesting to me. And he's getting the math done to see how he's going to be able to get onto this plane and how he's going to be able. It's all math and him, not losing his cool, of course, because he's Batman. And he uses his ejector seat, jumping at a certain angle off the bridge, to shoot up in almost like it's a rocket seat, which sounds ridiculous when you say it, but it works really well in the book. I can't get really good shots of these today, but he's shooting up in his ejector seat, talking to Gordon, telling him that he needs to get medics ready and things like that, and he realizes that their calculations are off. Batman's is more correct than, of course, Commissioner Gordon's, where they predict the plane to crash. And he gets on the plane, and there's, you get a little shot of this guy in the plane freaking out, saying, of all places to crash, we have to crash in Gotham, where there's a human who can't help us. We couldn't crash in Metropolis or somewhere where Green Lantern was. But then it shows Batman on the plane, which is interesting because you usually see Superman or somebody stopping a plane, but Batman's on the plane. And he's contacted, the Justice League, specifically the Lanterns and Superman, but they always use the excuse, they're off on another planet or they're fighting big monsters they can't help. Which sometimes gets on my nerves just because, they have to find an excuse and they can't find anything different than, they're fighting monsters so they're off on another planet. And Batman says, I got to take this into my own hands. But it's cool in this case. It's not as annoying as it usually is. And he puts these rocket boosters on the wings and uses his grappling hook and his batarang basically to get all around the plane. It leads to him being able to control the plane that's crashing. And it's basically his own bat plane, which they make a joke about. He can control the thrusters. He can control he has this rope that makes it move. And that's pretty cool. And he's basically expecting to crash and die. And Alfred says, with the impact, it's going to be able to save everyone on the plane, but you're on the outside of the plane. So the plane's taking all the damage and the inside's not taking any. And he's outside of it, so he's going to die. And he has to control it to the very end, or else, it's going to crash wrong and hurt everyone. So he has to stay. And he starts planning out the arrangements of what's going to happen after he dies. He says goodbye to Alfred. He says he has videos ready for everyone to be trained and to know what to do next. And you get this really touching moment out of nowhere with Batman, where he asks Alfred, he says, will my mother and father be proud of what I've done? Is this a good death? It's a very similar Dark Knight Returns moment to that. This could be a good death? But he's asking Alfred, and Alfred says, yes, sir, of course. This is, I'm proud of you. Everyone's proud of you. And I love the moment because it's very touching, and it's more touching than you'll get in a Batman book, but it feels kind of rushed because it's the first issue, and it feels like this would be at the end of a building story, but that's kind of why I like it. I kind of like how it's just taking place in this random moment at a random time. And, Batman always says, if I die, it's always going to be by some punk kid who gets lucky, or someone, who just, happens, I run out of luck that day. And this seems like one of those moments. It seems like one of those moments where he's running out of luck. And it's just, he dies by the most random moment. It's not by this big epic, it is epic, but it's not by this thing that's been building forever. So I kind of like that. And as he's getting ready to die, really, he gets stopped, and he thinks it's Superman, but it's these two mysterious people named Gotham and Gotham Girl, who are also on the cover. And it's I'm excited to see where this is going to go, but that's the most on-the-nose looking thing I've ever seen with these characters, their names, and Gotham Girl, and they're very random. You don't know who they are. They kind of have Superman's powers, at least the guy does. It doesn't really say what Gotham Girl does. But that's where it's building towards. That's who we saw at the end of the Rebirth issue. We're going to figure out who they are and what they're all about. I'm kind of excited for that. I liked this book with all of just the Batman being Batman and doing Batman stuff. The Gotham and Gotham Girl stuff could be amazing. I don't know. But I'm much more interested in the Detective Comics story that's happening. So this is good. It could be great. We'll just have to see. It's Detective Comics really showed that they're going to have a really good story from the very get-go. This one's kind of learning. I think they're going to have to earn it a little more just because of what their ideas are. But that's also, what Scott Snyder had to do with his Batman run. I remember the first story arc took a long time for me to get into, and it started getting better as he started, getting more into the story. So that was good. I like that a lot. Next is Green Arrow #1. Now, remember, this is the book that the Rebirth issue really surprised me, and I liked it a lot. And so I actually didn't have this on my pull list because just a reminder to everyone, if you put your Rebirth issues on a pull list, make sure you pull the Rebirth issue and you pull the #1, because the Rebirth issue is considered a one-shot, and it's not going to be, they're just making one issue of it, and it's in its own thing. You have to also subscribe to the actual #1 of the Rebirth issues too. So it's kind of confusing. I didn't have that with this one. I had with everything else. So I had to I forgot this one came out, and I actually drove back to my comic book store to pick it up because I liked the Rebirth issue so much. The artist is actually coming to my comic book store next week. I'm probably going to go because he'll sign these issues, which is just cool. So I might go meet him. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. But this was awesome. Once again, it was awesome. I apologize that, I'm going to just say this now. I apologize that I didn't do these reviews on yesterday, the day I was supposed to. But I was really looking to take my time with these books this time. I will probably not always do that, but I just wanted, with all these books coming out and with these #1s especially, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to know. And I wanted to not just all in one fell swoop read them because they start to run together to me and I kind of forget moments and things. So I read the books that I just reviewed. I read yesterday and the day before, and then the books that these next 2 books I read today. So I'm a little more fresh on these ones. But nevertheless, Green Arrow. This takes place right after the Rebirth issue, and he's fighting with Black Canary. And he's finding out that people are stealing homeless people and selling them for some reason. And they don't know why, but Oliver kind of finds out that, while he's fighting with Black Canary, he finds out that it's also being, there's children involved too, and there's something fishy going on with his company, and he doesn't really know what's going on, and we haven't really found out yet, but he's trying to look into it. And we are introduced to a lot of female characters in this book. We have, of course, Black Canary, and then we have Emmy, this girl Emmy, who I've never met. I don't know who. I've never seen anything else she's in. I'm sure she was in the arcs before this, but she is essentially Oliver's sister. And her mother is, what's her name? I'm gonna have to look at it real quick. Shadow is her mother, and she is being raised by Oliver, and she's helping fight with them, and she uses an arrow too. She's kind of like a Thea character, and they're fighting these guys who are very not human. They seem almost like zombies, but they talk, and they're really skinny, and they fight them, and it leads to them getting it stopped, and the cops come, and they're still trying to figure out why Oliver Queen is involved, and Oliver finds this construction worker with this cool moment where he shoots the cigar out of his mouth, and he finds out he was paid by these people to do this, and he's needs the money for his family and things like that, and Oliver basically pays him and the cops to be on his side. And Black Canary's really confused as to why, these guys are bad guys. You should arrest this construction worker because he's working with these guys. And this is where the more liberal Oliver Queen comes back in. He says, I'm not condemning or rewarding anyone for bad behavior. I'm encouraging goodness. And I'm not paying them off. I'm enlisting them, tipping them. We've created a prison factory that creates career criminals. Do you know how many people are incarcerated in this country? So these are some very Oliver Queen moments where he's taking, his idea of law and using his money and his resources to pay off people to be good. And he believes that the prisons are only creating more enemies and creating more bad guys. And by not arresting them but having them work with you by using money, they are naturally going to become good people. It's an interesting notion. I'm sure it's argued amongst people politically. But it's very interesting, and I like that aspect of Oliver because he's very different than many other heroes, and it shows that that is a very controversial thing he's doing, and some people could think he could be in big trouble for that. For some people, he could not be considered a hero to some people for that, but that's only Green Arrow can get away with that and have this argument because that's what Green Arrow is all about. And then you get this interesting moment with him sleeping with Black Canary, which he just met her, but in a very Oliver Queen way, that's what he's doing. And it's him going around, talking to his sister and how he's taking care of her and how he's introducing Black Canary to all the good he's really doing because she's still questioning this whole money thing. And it's showing all of the things in Seattle that he's funding. He has a Queen's Helping Hand, which is for the homeless. He has a children's hospital. He has even a public park that's a baseball field. He has a fresh start place for people who are abused. He has all these places he's funding, and he says that he's really trying to make a good community. And he's riding around on his motorcycle with her and showing her all these. And he's trying to show what happiness is and what good is and why he does what he does. And he's also trying to say, he wants to be with her. There's something that he really likes about her, and he wants to be with her. And then it leads to him going into one of his office buildings and meeting with this woman. I don't know if they say her name, but she's kind of a receptionist / office worker who has, he's trying to get information about these people, basically, who are trafficking homeless people and children and all that. And he's talking to her, very Felicity-like she is, yet a million times better. The running thing with this book, for me, is they're introducing all these female characters, probably more than what are in the show, and they are all done a million times better. This is basically a big kick in the nuts to the TV show, because it's all these characters who are very, 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 very similar to the characters in the TV show, and that you like every single one of them. And in the TV show, you have all these characters who you don't like any of them. There's not one of them that you sympathize with or think are funny or like their character at all. And this is doing that. And he meets up in the office building with this Cyrus Broderick to talk about it, and he's very kind of shady, and you don't really know what he's doing, and you kind of realize he's a bad guy, and he's working. You can tell he's working. You have the very evil panel where it shows this dark lighting underneath him, him saying, it's time. So something's bound to happen. And you can tell he's helping this next person because Oliver goes back to his apartment, and he immediately gets shot up by about 30 arrows. I mean, by the end of this book, he has like a million arrows in him. And you also see the bad guy put on the mask that he's been searching for, that Oliver's been searching for, that basically tells you he's the bad guy. And he's Oliver, but Oliver gets ambushed, and he's very confused. And basically the person who is after him is Shadow. And she's attacking him, and this masked group are basically hiring her to kill Oliver. And he fights Shadow, basically beats her, and then Emmy shows up and picks up Oliver's old bow and arrow and shoots Oliver again. And it ends with her basically joining allegiance with her mother again. So a big twist ending to explain, I guess, it's that she's on her mother's side now, and they're against Oliver. I love that book a lot. I'm really excited to see where it's going. I love the characters. If you really liked the Arrow show and you have been disappointed with what's going on with it lately, and this is basically season 3 of Arrow. You just think of this as season 3 because it's some different characters and things, and they're in different places and stuff, but it has exactly what you'd want with the Arrow character, the Green Arrow character. And I thought it was awesome. There's probably more women characters in this book than in this TV show, and they're all done perfectly, and they are all very interesting. And I hope a lot of them stay in the book, which I'm assuming they will. So yeah, that was awesome. I'm really happy with that. And then the last book for today is Green Lanterns #1. Now this one has a mixed bag for me. I didn't care at all for the Rebirth issue. It was alright. I just don't have a connection with Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz yet. I really am interested in Jessica Cruz, especially after that Darkseid War issue that I had been reading. And Simon Baz, I've never read anything about him. I've always just known as he's a character who's very interesting, but not, because he has an interesting backstory. He has an interesting costume, but he doesn't really have much of a character in the stories. And this kind of shows it. He kind of just, it's a good cop, bad cop thing. It's also a buddy cop thing. Basically what's going on is they are new partners, and this is definitely more down to earth, literally. Recently, the Green Lantern books have been space operas, and I think that's what the Hal Jordan book is going to be, which I'm excited to pick up. And Jeff Johns' run essentially was a big space opera. This one is back on Earth, and they're dealing with just areas on Earth, which is cool. It's a nice change up. I like that part of it, because if this is going to be more on Earth than the Green Lantern books, Hal Jordan stuff's going to be on other planets. That's cool. So that's cool, and it could get better. They're working together, finding out that there's something going on in this barn, and they break down the door, and they find this mutilated alien, and these humans who are acting like Red Lanterns, who are very angry, but they don't necessarily have the powers. They're just angry, and you can tell they're corrupted by it. And they stop this guy, this crazy guy, and they find this weird, hideous, mutilated alien body, and they call the police. They find also just other mutilated bodies that are in a hole, and they don't really know what's going on. The cops explain that this whole community has been having people missing for weeks and weeks, and they don't really know where they went, and now they found them, so everyone's very angry. And with them being angry, finding out all these people that have been missing are dead, they themselves kind of have the Red Lanterns in them, and it creates this pillar, this red pillar that is essentially corrupting the entire town. And then Argus shows up out of nowhere, and they get, of course, like Argus would, under Amanda Waller, who isn't here but has a lackey. She's basically telling the Green Lanterns to leave. Tells them to leave, and they leave. Then we get a shot of Atronicus, who's the leader of the Red Lanterns, and he's doing evil things and talking about his, plan to take over the world. And then we get kind of a look at Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz out of costume. Jessica Cruz is with her sister at a store, kind of just trying to get along. I don't know her backstory very well, just because I read the last issue. I'm assuming that she has a better relationship with her sister if you read those books. But her ring's really freaking out at the store. And we find out her sister knows she's a Green Lantern too, but her ring's freaking out and she doesn't know why. Simon is dealing with what essentially is where he started as a character. He was arrested for a terrorism act because he is, I think he's Muslim for his religion, and he's from that area of the world. That's his heritage. And his family, they're trying to help him because he became a Green Lantern in prison, which is a very interesting part of the story. And you're led to assume that he's been falsely arrested of a terrorism act because of who he is. And he's angry because he wants to just have a good life with him and his family. And all of a sudden, in the middle of this argument, he gets this vision where he sees him dead. He sees one of the Guardians, I think, talking about a new powerful ring that they've created. His brother, I think, is who it is, one of his family members with the rage, and he has a Red Lantern's ring. Jessica Cruz asking for help. And the ring is telling him basically he has learned a new power, and it's called Emerald Sight. So what you're led to believe is Emerald Sight is this new power where he can see into the future, essentially. And then the last shot is of Atroticus. Is that how you say his name? I don't remember. But Atroticus is basically saying he's looking forward to starting his new plan to take over Earth called Red Dawn, I think is what it's called. There's a lot of hit and miss here. There's a lot of things I really like, a lot of things I don't like. I like the relationship between Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz and how they're not getting along, but they care about each other. I like the families that they are with. I like how this is taking place on Earth over space. I like how, Simon's dealing with this, discrimination stuff. I like these people who are getting taken over by the Red Lanterns, kind of. The thing that's really just kind of off for me is just, this seems just like a basic take over the world story, and they're using the there's nothing compelling about the enemy in this book right now. The Atroticus is a very hit and miss enemy. I mean, sometimes he's done very well. When Jeff Johns wrote him, he was interesting to see, who he was and what he was all about. But then, they've kind of stopped that, and with this, they don't really know what to do with him. And I'm going to stick with it another issue, and I'm going to see if it's getting anywhere. But if it's starting to go away, I may just drop this book and go on to Hal Jordan Green Lantern. I'm not sure yet. I like the characters a lot, though, so I'm really kind of hoping this one is starting to pick up, because it could just be like the Superman issue where they're just taking their time with this to kind of introduce people still. So I'm giving it an issue or two more to see where it's going. I'm also really looking to pick up a Marvel book. If you have any recommendations for a Marvel book that I should start reading, leave it in the comments below. I feel bad that I'm only doing DC right now. I need something Marvel. I just don't know where to start. So if anyone has any recommendations for me, totally leave them in the comments or message me. That's fine too. But that was the books for this week. Overall, really good. I think right now we're just kind of in that dead zone area where they're having to reintroduce things and just build up a new story because we've relaunched. I'm really excited for the Superman books, both of those. I'm excited for the Batman books. Those books can be hit and miss for me as well because there's so many Batman stories. I've had enough of Batman in my life. I think he's had enough stories that I'm satisfied. So it's hard for me to be invested anymore. But I'm invested, so I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the Flash stuff still. That stuff got a little bit of a break. I'm ultra excited for Wonder Woman. I just saw more pages of what's going on with her book, and I cannot believe what they're drawing with her. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I cannot wait for more of Wonder Woman. Her and Superman are probably my top two right now. Her and Superman and Flash are all neck and neck. But then behind that is, of course, Batman and stuff. And Green Arrow is amazing as well. So I recommend all these books. Just because I didn't necessarily care for one of them doesn't mean you don't have to read them. I just highly recommend all these because I think right now they're really getting on track with what's going on. So without further ado, that's the end of this video, and I will see you next week.